The morning of September 14th, 1996, dawned crisp and clear in the Colorado Rockies, with the kind of golden autumn light that photographers dream about and hikers live for. Sarah Martinez, 28, and Michael Chen, 30, had been planning this particular hiking trip for over 6 months, carefully researching trails, studying topographical maps, and preparing gear for what they intended to be the adventure of a lifetime. Sarah, a marine biologist working for the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration in Boulder, had fallen in love with the Colorado wilderness during her graduate studies at the University of Colorado. Her expertise in outdoor survival and her methodical approach to planning made her the navigator of their hiking partnership. Michael, a software engineer for a Denver-based telecommunications company, brought technical skills and an engineer's precision to their outdoor adventures, along with an infectious enthusiasm for pushing boundaries and exploring unmarked territories. The couple had met 3 years earlier at a rock climbing gym in Boulder, bonding over their shared passion for outdoor adventures and their complementary skills. Sarah's scientific background in field research paired perfectly with Michael's technical problem-solving abilities, making them a formidable team on challenging trails. Their friends often joked that they were like a real-life adventure documentary crew, always seeking the next unexplored corner of Colorado's vast wilderness. Their destination for this September trip was the remote Phantom Ridge area of the Maroon Bells Snowmass Wilderness, a section of pristine alpine terrain known for its challenging terrain, unpredictable weather, and stunning geological formations. The area was popular among experienced hikers, but remained relatively untouched due to its difficulty level and the technical climbing skills required to access many of its most spectacular viewpoints. The couple had obtained all necessary permits from the U.S. Forest Service and had filed a detailed hiking plan with the Pitkin County Sheriff's Office as required for backcountry camping in the wilderness area. Their planned route would take them through a series of high-altitude valleys, over 2 mountain passes, and into some of the most remote terrain in Colorado, with an estimated hiking time of 7 days and 6 nights. Sarah's meticulously planned itinerary included daily waypoints, alternative routes in case of weather changes, and detailed notes about water sources, camping locations, and potential hazards. She had researched historical weather patterns for the area and had packed gear appropriate for temperatures ranging from the mild 60s during the day to potentially freezing conditions at night at their highest planned elevation of nearly 13,000 feet. Michael had been responsible for testing and packing their technical equipment, GPS units, emergency beacons, satellite phones, and backup navigation tools. His engineering background made him particularly careful about redundancy in critical systems, and their gear included multiple ways to signal for help, navigate, and communicate with the outside world. The couple's preparation was thorough and professional. They had completed several shorter backpacking trips earlier that summer to test their gear and physical conditioning. Both were experienced hikers with hundreds of miles of Colorado trails under their boots, and they had previously completed multi-day backcountry trips without incident. On the morning of their departure, they met at the Maroon Lake trailhead at 6 a.m., as planned. The parking area was nearly empty at that early hour, with only a few other vehicles belonging to serious hikers who preferred to start their adventures before the crowds arrived. The September air was thin and cold, requiring jackets and gloves despite the promise of a warm afternoon once the sun cleared the surrounding peaks. Sarah and Michael spent nearly an hour conducting a final gear check, reviewing their planned route, and updating their satellite GPS units with the latest waypoint coordinates. Their packs were loaded with 7 days of food, water purification equipment, cold weather gear, emergency supplies, and camping equipment designed for alpine conditions. The couple's combined outdoor experience totaled over 15 years, and their gear reflected their serious approach to wilderness travel. Sarah carried a 65-litre pack loaded with approximately 40 pounds of carefully selected equipment, while Michael shouldered a 70-litre pack weighing nearly 45 pounds. Every item had been weighed and evaluated for its necessity, and their food had been precisely calculated to provide adequate nutrition while minimizing weight. Their planned route would take them initially along the well-maintained Crater Lake Trail for the first day, then branch off onto less-traveled paths that would lead them deeper into the wilderness area. The first night's campsite was at a designated backcountry camping area near Crater Lake, where they planned to acclimate to the altitude and make final adjustments to their packs before heading into more remote terrain. At 7:15 a.m., after completing their preparations and taking several photographs at the trailhead, Sarah and Michael began hiking toward what would become one of Colorado's most enduring mysteries. The last verified sighting of the couple was captured by another hiker's camera at approximately 9:30 a.m. as they passed the Crater Lake viewpoint. The photograph, discovered weeks later during the investigation, showed Sarah and Michael smiling and waving at the camera, with the distinctive Maroon Bells peaks visible in the background. According to the timestamp on the photograph and their planned itinerary, the couple was making excellent time and appeared to be in good spirits. Sarah was captured mid-laugh, apparently reacting to something Michael had said, while Michael had one arm raised in a cheerful wave toward the photographer. Both appeared healthy, properly equipped and confident as they continued their journey into the wilderness. The photographer, Janet Morrison, a retired teacher from Denver, later told investigators that she had briefly chatted with Sarah and Michael at the viewpoint. "They seemed very well prepared and experienced," Morrison recalled. "They had professional-looking gear, they knew exactly where they were going, and they seemed excited about their adventure." The woman mentioned they were planning to explore some areas that weren't on the regular trail maps. Morrison's recollection proved to be crucial in the subsequent investigation, as it was the last confirmed contact between Sarah and Michael and the outside world. After leaving the Crater Lake viewpoint, the couple continued along their planned route toward more remote sections of the wilderness, where the trails became less defined and the possibility of encountering other hikers diminished significantly. The first indication that something might be wrong came on September 20th, when Sarah and Michael failed to check out of the wilderness area as scheduled. According to their filed hiking plan, they were supposed to exit the backcountry via the Capitol Creek trailhead and check in with the Pitkin County Sheriff's Office by 6 p.m. that evening. When the couple failed to appear by 8 p.m., the Sheriff's Office initiated standard protocols for overdue hikers. Deputies contacted the couple's emergency contacts and confirmed that neither Sarah nor Michael had changed their plans or attempted to contact family members about delays. Sarah's emergency contact was her sister, Dr. Elena Martinez, a physician in Albuquerque, who confirmed that Sarah was meticulous about following hiking plans and would never fail to check in without a serious reason. Michael's parents in San Francisco similarly confirmed that their son was extremely responsible about communication and safety protocols during his outdoor adventures. By 10 p.m. on September 20th, the Pitkin County Sheriff's Office had officially classified Sarah and Michael as overdue and missing, triggering the beginning of one of the most extensive search and rescue operations in Colorado history. The initial search began at dawn on September 21st, with teams deployed to both the couple's planned entry point at Maroon Lake and their intended exit point at Capitol Creek. Search and rescue coordinators used Sarah and Michael's detailed hiking plan to establish the most likely areas where the couple might be located, focusing initially on their planned campsites and known challenging sections of their route. The search involved multiple agencies and volunteer organizations, including the Pitkin County Sheriff's Office Search and Rescue Team, the Colorado Mountain Rescue Association, the Civil Air Patrol, and dozens of volunteer hikers familiar with the wilderness area. The operation was coordinated by Sheriff Sergeant David Thompson, a 20-year veteran with extensive experience in wilderness search and rescue operations. During the first 3 days of searching, teams covered over 150 square miles of rugged terrain, including the couple's entire planned route and numerous alternative paths they might have taken if weather or trail conditions had forced route changes. Helicopters conducted aerial searches of the high-altitude areas that were difficult to reach on foot, while ground teams systematically searched every campsite, trail junction, and potential shelter in the region. The search was complicated by the challenging terrain and rapidly changing weather conditions typical of the Colorado Rockies in late September. Searchers had to contend with afternoon thunderstorms, sudden temperature drops, and the early snow that can occur at high elevations even in early fall. On September 23rd, searchers found what appeared to be their first significant clue: an energy bar wrapper near a stream crossing on the couple's planned route, approximately 8 miles from the Maroon Lake trailhead. The wrapper was from a brand that Michael was known to prefer, and its location was consistent with their planned second day's hiking schedule. However, further investigation revealed that the wrapper could not be definitively linked to Sarah and Michael, as the same brand was popular among many hikers in the area. More concerning was the fact that despite intensive searching in the immediate vicinity of the discovery, no other trace of the couple could be found. As the search entered its second week, the focus expanded to include areas outside the couple's planned route. Search coordinators considered the possibility that Sarah and Michael might have become lost or injured and traveled significant distances from their intended path while attempting to self-rescue. Teams began searching alternative drainage systems, exploring the possibility that the couple might have followed water sources if they had become disoriented. The search area eventually covered over 400 square miles of wilderness, including regions that even experienced hikers rarely visited. Ground teams were supplemented by technical climbing specialists who could access the steep cliff areas and couloirs where an accident might have occurred. These teams rappelled into numerous gullies and searched the bases of cliff systems where falling rocks or climbing accidents might have trapped or injured hikers. The aerial search component utilized both helicopters and fixed-wing aircraft equipped with sophisticated camera systems and heat-detecting equipment. Pilots flew systematic grid patterns over the vast search area, photographing potential clues and using thermal imaging to detect any signs of human presence. By October the 1st, after 2 weeks of intensive searching involving over 200 volunteers and professional rescuers, the official search and rescue operation was scaled back to a monitoring status. While periodic searches would continue and any new information would trigger renewed efforts, the massive daily operations were suspended due to increasingly dangerous weather conditions and the approaching winter season. The decision to scale back the search was particularly difficult for Sheriff Thompson, who had coordinated similar operations for over 2 decades. "In 30 years of search and rescue work," he told local media, "I've never encountered a case where 2 experienced hikers with proper equipment simply vanish so completely. There should have been some trace, some sign of their passage or their presence." The investigation shifted focus from active searching to analyzing the evidence that had been gathered and exploring alternative theories about what might have happened to Sarah and Michael. Investigators reviewed weather records for the period when the couple was hiking, examining the possibility that unexpected storms or temperature changes might have created dangerous conditions. Analysis of satellite weather data showed that conditions during Sarah and Michael's planned hiking period had been generally favorable, with no severe storms or unusual weather events that would explain a tragic accident. Temperatures had remained within expected ranges for the season, and precipitation had been minimal. Investigators also examined the possibility of equipment failure, reviewing the couple's gear lists and consulting with manufacturers about potential problems with their navigation or communication equipment. However, the redundancy in their systems made it unlikely that simultaneous failures of multiple devices could explain their disappearance. The couple's financial records and personal relationships were thoroughly investigated to rule out the possibility that their disappearance was voluntary. Both Sarah and Michael had stable careers, healthy relationships with family and friends, and no indication of personal problems that might motivate them to deliberately vanish. Sarah's work with Noe involved several ongoing research projects that she was excited to continue, and colleagues confirmed that she had been making plans for work-related travel in the months following her hiking trip. Michael had recently received a promotion at his software company and was in the process of buying a house in Boulder, with mortgage applications and other documentation indicating his intention to remain in Colorado for the foreseeable future. As autumn turned to winter in the Colorado Rockies, the search for Sarah and Michael became increasingly difficult and eventually impossible due to snow cover at high elevations. The couple's families maintained hope that they might have survived and found shelter somewhere in the vast wilderness, but as weeks turned to months without any contact, that hope gradually faded. The case attracted national media attention, partly because of the couple's thorough preparation and partly because their disappearance seemed to defy logical explanation. Experienced outdoor recreation experts were puzzled by the absence of any trace evidence, and the story became a cautionary tale about the unpredictable dangers of wilderness travel, even for well-prepared and experienced hikers. Sarah's sister, Elena, organized a private search effort that continued sporadically throughout the following spring and summer, hiring professional guides and mountain rescue specialists to explore areas that might have been missed during the official search. These efforts covered additional terrain and employed new search techniques, but yielded no additional clues about the couple's fate. Michael's parents established a scholarship fund for outdoor education programs, hoping to honor their son's memory while promoting wilderness safety education. The fund supported programs that taught navigation skills, emergency procedures, and risk assessment to hikers and backpackers throughout Colorado. The Maroon Bells Snowmass Wilderness area, where Sarah and Michael disappeared, covers over 180,000 acres of some of the most rugged and remote terrain in Colorado. The landscape includes numerous hidden valleys, steep canyon systems, and geological formations that could potentially conceal evidence for decades or even centuries. Professional search and rescue experts acknowledged that the sheer size and complexity of the search area made it possible that the couple's remains might never be found, regardless of what had actually happened to them. The wilderness had claimed other hikers over the years, and some had never been recovered, despite extensive search efforts. As the first anniversary of their disappearance approached, investigators began to consider the possibility that Sarah and Michael's case might join the ranks of Colorado's permanently unsolved missing persons cases. The couple's families held memorial services, but continued to hope that someday new evidence might provide answers about their loved one's fate. The case file remained open, and the Pitkin County Sheriff's Office committed to investigating any new leads that might emerge. However, as time passed without any developments, active investigation efforts were reduced, and the case became one of many cold cases in the Sheriff's Department files. Local hiking guides and wilderness enthusiasts occasionally reported possible sightings or discoveries of equipment that might be related to the missing couple, but none of these reports led to concrete evidence. The wilderness seemed to have swallowed Sarah Martinez and Michael Chen without leaving any trace of their passage. For nearly 3 decades, their disappearance remained one of Colorado's most puzzling, unsolved mysteries, discussed in hiking forums, featured in true crime documentaries, and studied by search and rescue professionals as an example of how experienced outdoors people could seemingly vanish without explanation. The couple's families never stopped hoping for answers, but as years turned into decades, the likelihood of solving the mystery seemed to diminish with each passing season. The Colorado Rockies had kept their secret for 28 years, through countless storms, seasonal changes, and the gradual transformation of the landscape itself. But wilderness areas, no matter how vast and unforgiving, sometimes yield their secrets in the most unexpected ways, at the most unexpected times, and through the most extraordinary circumstances. The discovery that would finally shed light on Sarah and Michael's fate was still waiting in the remote valleys of the Maroon Bells Snowmass Wilderness, in a place where the normal rules of time and nature seemed not to apply. Dr. Amanda Foster had been studying climate change effects on high-altitude ecosystems in the Colorado Rockies for over a decade, when she made the discovery that would reopen one of the state's most famous cold cases. As a glaciologist and environmental scientist working for the National Science Foundation, Foster specialized in documenting how rising temperatures were affecting mountain environments, particularly the retreat of glaciers and permanent snowfields that had existed for centuries. On the morning of August 15, 2024, Foster was leading a small research team into a remote section of the Maroon Bells Snowmass Wilderness, collecting data about accelerated snowmelt in areas that had previously been covered year-round. The team was part of a larger multi-year study examining how climate change was revealing landscapes that had been hidden under ice and snow for decades or even centuries. Foster's team that day consisted of herself, graduate student Marcus Rodriguez from the University of Colorado, and Dr. James Liu, a geologist from Colorado State University who specialized in high-altitude terrain changes. They were equipped with sophisticated GPS mapping equipment, ground-penetrating radar, and cameras designed to document the newly exposed landscapes they were studying. The area they were investigating was approximately 12 miles from the nearest maintained trail, accessible only by helicopter or by experienced hikers willing to undertake a challenging multi-day trek. The location had been selected based on satellite imagery showing significant changes in snow cover patterns over the previous 5 years, suggesting that warming temperatures were exposing terrain that had been hidden for extended periods. "What we're seeing in these high-altitude areas," Foster explained to her team as they established their research station, "is essentially a process of landscape archaeology. As the permanent snow and ice retreat, we're finding evidence of past human activity, historical artifacts, and sometimes even geological features that haven't been visible for decades." The team had already documented several interesting discoveries during their 3-day expedition, including remnants of old mining equipment from the late 1800s and evidence of Native American presence in areas that had been considered inaccessible in modern times. Their work was part of a broader effort to understand how climate change was literally reshaping the landscape of the American West. It was Rodriguez who first spotted the anomaly that would change everything. While using ground-penetrating radar to map subsurface ice formations, he detected what appeared to be artificial objects buried under approximately 3 feet of packed snow and ice in a sheltered valley that had only recently been exposed by snowmelt. "Dr. Foster," Rodriguez called from about 50 yards away from their main research site, "I'm getting some really unusual readings over here. The radar is showing what looks like manufactured materials, and they're in a configuration that doesn't match any natural formation." Foster and Dr. Liu immediately suspended their other work to investigate Rodriguez's discovery. The ground-penetrating radar clearly showed the outlines of what appeared to be 2 large backpacks and associated camping equipment, all preserved under what had obviously been a stable snow and ice layer for an extended period. "This is extraordinary, Doctor," Liu observed as they analyzed the radar images. Based on the depth and the ice formation patterns, these objects have been buried here for years, possibly decades, but the preservation appears to be remarkable. The team faced an immediate decision about how to proceed. As scientists conducting climate research, they were not equipped for archaeological excavation, and they recognized that if these objects were connected to missing persons cases, their discovery could have significant legal and investigative implications. Foster decided to document the discovery thoroughly before taking any action that might disturb the site. The team spent several hours using multiple types of sensors to map the exact location and configuration of the buried objects, taking detailed photographs and GPS coordinates that would allow the site to be relocated precisely. "Whatever we're looking at," Foster told her team, "has been preserved in what amounts to a natural deep freeze for a significant period of time. The ice formation patterns suggest these objects were buried during a period of heavy snowfall and then remained under stable ice cover until very recently." The team's analysis revealed that the objects were located in a natural depression that would have acted as a snow collection point during winter storms. Over time, successive layers of snow would have accumulated and compressed into ice, creating a protective environment that could preserve organic materials far beyond their normal decomposition timeline. Using careful excavation techniques borrowed from archaeological methodology, the team began the delicate process of exposing the buried objects. What they found defied every expectation they had formed about what the site might contain. The first backpack they uncovered was a high-quality hiking pack in remarkably good condition, showing minimal signs of weathering despite obviously having been buried for an extended period. The pack's fabric was intact, the zippers functioned properly, and even the external straps and buckles showed little corrosion or damage. "This level of preservation is incredible," Dr. Liu commented as they carefully photographed the pack before moving it. "It's like these objects were placed in a time capsule. The ice formation has created an almost perfect preservation environment." Inside the first backpack, the team found items that immediately suggested a connection to a missing persons case. There were hiking permits and wilderness registration forms dated September 1996, along with a driver's license belonging to Michael Chen, and camping reservations for the exact dates that corresponded to the famous disappearance of Chen and Sarah Martinez. But what made the discovery truly extraordinary was the condition of the perishable items they found alongside the documentation. The backpack contained food supplies that appeared to be fresh, energy bars that were soft and edible, dried fruit that retained its original texture and color, and even fresh apples that showed no signs of decay or dehydration. "This is impossible," Rodriguez said as he carefully examined an apple that looked like it had been packed for a hiking trip just days earlier. "These organic materials should have decomposed decades ago, even under ideal preservation conditions." The second backpack, which belonged to Sarah Martinez according to the identification they found inside, contained similarly impossible contents. Fresh bread that was still soft, cheese that showed no signs of mold or spoilage, and vegetables that appeared to have been recently harvested. Even more puzzling, some of the food items were brands and varieties that hadn't existed in 1996, suggesting they had been purchased recently. Foster's scientific training struggled to process what they were observing. "In 30 years of studying preservation conditions in extreme environments," she told her team, "I've never seen anything like this. These conditions shouldn't be capable of preserving organic materials in this state for nearly 3 decades. The team also discovered camping equipment that defied logical explanation. Sarah's sleeping bag was clean and appeared recently used, with no signs of the moisture damage or deterioration that would be expected from decades of storage in natural conditions. Michael's camping stove had fuel in it that was still functional, and their water bottles contained water that appeared fresh and potable. Most disturbing of all were the personal items that suggested recent activity. Sarah's journal contained entries dated as recently as August 2024, written in what appeared to be her handwriting and describing hiking experiences in areas of the Colorado wilderness that matched their current location. August 10, 2024, read one entry in Sarah's distinctive handwriting. We've been exploring the high valleys above the main trail system. The landscape is changing so rapidly due to the warming climate. Areas that were covered with snow and ice when we first came here are now exposed, revealing incredible geological formations. The journal entries described hiking experiences that spanned the entire period from 1996 to 2024, as if Sarah and Michael had been continuously exploring the wilderness for nearly 3 decades. The entries were detailed and consistent, describing seasonal changes, wildlife observations, and geographical discoveries that demonstrated intimate knowledge of the region's evolution over time. Michael found a new route to the Hidden Valley today, read another entry dated just 5 days before Foster's team made their discovery. The glacier retreat has opened up passages that weren't accessible before. We're going to explore the area where the old research teams have been working. It will be interesting to see what they're discovering about the environmental changes we've been observing firsthand. Dr. Liu was the first to voice what all 3 researchers were thinking, but were reluctant to acknowledge. The implications of what we're finding here challenge fundamental assumptions about time, preservation, and possibly even human survival in extreme environments. Foster knew that their discovery would require immediate notification of law enforcement authorities, but she also recognized that the extraordinary nature of their findings would likely be met with skepticism. The team spent the remainder of the day documenting everything they had found with detailed photographs, video recordings, and precise measurements. They discovered additional evidence that Sarah and Michael had not only survived their initial disappearance, but had somehow continued living in the wilderness for the intervening decades. Equipment modifications showed signs of ongoing maintenance and improvement, suggesting problem-solving and adaptation over time. Some gear had been repaired using materials that were clearly of recent manufacture. "Look at this," Rodriguez said, pointing to Michael's backpack frame, which had been modified with modern lightweight materials and hardware that definitely hadn't existed in 1996. Someone has been systematically upgrading and maintaining this equipment using contemporary materials. The team found evidence of sophisticated survival techniques that suggested long-term wilderness habitation. There were tools improvised from natural materials, detailed maps hand-drawn on birch bark showing areas of the wilderness that weren't included in official topographical surveys, and even a small cache of medical supplies that included medications with expiration dates from 2023. Perhaps most puzzling was a collection of photographs that appeared to document Sarah and Michael's ongoing wilderness experiences. The photos showed the couple in various locations throughout the Colorado wilderness, clearly aged from their 1996 appearance, but appearing healthy and adapted to their environment. The most recent photos were dated just weeks before Foster's team made their discovery. As the day progressed, Foster's team uncovered additional evidence that challenged their understanding of what was possible. They found detailed weather observations recorded in Sarah's scientific handwriting, documenting climate patterns and environmental changes with the precision of a professional researcher. The observations covered the entire period from 1996 to 2024 and showed deep understanding of long-term ecological processes. "These aren't the notes of someone who's been struggling to survive in the wilderness," Dr. Liu observed. "These are the systematic observations of someone who's been conducting long-term environmental research with access to contemporary scientific methodology." The team also discovered evidence that Sarah and Michael had been aware of the search efforts conducted immediately after their disappearance. Sarah's journal included detailed descriptions of helicopters and search teams, along with what appeared to be deliberate decisions to avoid contact with rescuers. September 25, 1996, read one entry. The search helicopters have been flying over our area for the past week. We can see the teams working their way through the valleys below. We've decided it's better not to make contact yet. We're learning things here that are too important to interrupt. The place where we've been staying operates under different rules than the outside world. Foster realized that their discovery would require careful handling by authorities who specialized in missing persons cases, but she also understood that the scientific implications of their findings were potentially revolutionary. The preservation conditions they had observed could have applications for understanding natural preservation processes, and the apparent time distortion effects warranted serious scientific investigation. On the evening of August 15th, Foster used her satellite communication device to contact the Pitkin County Sheriff's Office, the same agency that had coordinated the original search for Sarah and Michael in 1996. She spoke with Detective Lisa Chen, no relation to Michael Chen, who had recently taken over the cold case files from the now-retired Sergeant Thompson. "Detective Chen," Foster said during the satellite call, "this is Dr. Amanda Foster with the National Science Foundation. I'm calling to report a discovery that appears to be related to the 1996 disappearance of Sarah Martinez and Michael Chen in the Maroon Bells Snowmass Wilderness." "Dr. Foster, that's a case I'm very familiar with. What type of discovery are you reporting?" "We've found what appear to be their backpacks and camping equipment, but Detective, I need to warn you that the circumstances of this discovery are highly unusual and will require careful investigation. Can you be more specific about what you mean by unusual circumstances?" Foster paused, knowing how her next words would sound. "Detective, the equipment we've found includes food supplies that appear to be fresh, despite having been buried under ice for what appears to be decades. We've also found evidence suggesting that the missing persons may have survived and continued living in the wilderness for an extended period." There was a long silence on the satellite connection before Detective Chen responded. "Dr. Foster, I'm going to need you to secure the site and provide exact GPS coordinates. We'll be dispatching a team to your location as soon as weather conditions permit." "Detective, there's one more thing you should know. We've found what appears to be recent journal entries and photographs suggesting ongoing activity as recently as this month." Another pause. "Doctor, Foster, are you suggesting that these two people have been living in the wilderness for 28 years? "Detective, I'm reporting exactly what we've observed and documented. The interpretation of these findings will require investigation by people with expertise in areas that go beyond my scientific background." That night, as Foster's team camped near their discovery site to maintain security until law enforcement arrived, they discussed the implications of what they had found. None of them had training that prepared them to understand how people could survive for nearly 3 decades in one of Colorado's most challenging wilderness environments, or how organic materials could remain fresh for such an extended period. "There are aspects of this discovery," Foster told her team around their camp stove that evening, "that challenge fundamental assumptions about survival, preservation, and possibly even the nature of time itself in certain geographical locations." Rodriguez, who had been photographing and cataloging their findings, raised a question that had been troubling all of them. "Dr. Foster, what if this location has properties that we don't understand? What if there's something about this particular area that affects normal physical processes?" Dr. Liu, whose geological expertise had revealed unusual mineral compositions in the surrounding rock formations, nodded thoughtfully. "The geological survey data for this area has always shown some anomalies, magnetic field variations, unusual mineral deposits, and some electromagnetic phenomena that don't fit standard models. Foster knew that their discovery would attract attention from investigators, scientists, and possibly federal agencies interested in unexplained phenomena. But she also recognized that they had a responsibility to report their findings accurately and completely, regardless of how extraordinary those findings might appear. As they settled into their sleeping bags that night, surrounded by evidence that defied logical explanation, Foster's team couldn't help but wonder what other secrets might be hidden in the remote valleys of the Colorado wilderness. Their discovery had answered some questions about the fate of Sarah Martinez and Michael Chen, but it had raised many more questions about the nature of survival, time, and the unexplored mysteries that might exist in America's vast wilderness areas. The helicopter carrying Detective Chen and a specialized investigation team was scheduled to arrive at first light, beginning what would become one of the most unusual missing persons investigations in Colorado history. But Foster suspected that their discovery was only the beginning of a mystery that would challenge everything investigators thought they knew about the limits of human survival and the nature of reality itself in the remote corners of the American wilderness. Detective Lisa Chen arrived at the discovery site on the morning of August 16th, accompanied by a team that included federal investigators, forensic specialists, and Dr. Robert Harrison, a physicist from NOAA who specialized in atmospheric and temporal anomalies. The helicopter landing in the remote valley marked the beginning of the most unusual investigation in Colorado law enforcement history. Dr. Foster briefed the investigative team on their findings, presenting the evidence with scientific precision while acknowledging the extraordinary nature of what they had discovered. The federal involvement had been triggered not just by the missing persons case, but by preliminary reports suggesting phenomena that might have national security implications. Detective Chen, Dr. Foster explained as they examined the preserved backpacks, what we're dealing with here appears to violate several fundamental principles of physics and biology. The preservation of organic materials under these conditions for this duration should be impossible, according to our current understanding. Detective Chen, who had spent 15 years investigating missing persons cases, found herself confronting evidence that challenged everything she thought she knew about her profession. Dr. Foster, in your professional opinion, is there any conventional explanation for what you've discovered? Based on known science, no. The food preservation alone would require technology that doesn't exist. The journal entries and photographs suggest these individuals have been actively present in this location for 28 years, which raises questions about survival, aging, and the nature of time itself in this specific location. Dr. Harrison began his investigation by taking electromagnetic and radiation readings throughout the area. His instruments immediately detected anomalies that confirmed the geological team's earlier observations about unusual properties in this location. I'm reading significant magnetic field variations, Dr. Harrison reported to the team. The electromagnetic signature of this area is unlike anything in my database. There are patterns here that suggest we're dealing with a natural phenomenon that current science can't fully explain. The investigation team established a secure perimeter around the discovery site and began systematically documenting every aspect of what Dr. Foster's team had found. Federal protocol required that any evidence suggesting technological or scientific anomalies be thoroughly investigated before conclusions could be reached. As the forensic specialists examined Sarah's journal entries, they confirmed that the handwriting analysis was consistent with samples from her 1996 hiking permits. Carbon dating of the paper revealed results that defied explanation. Some entries showed the expected aging for 28-year-old paper, while others appeared to have been written on paper manufactured within the last few years. The handwriting analysis confirms these entries were written by Sarah Martinez, reported FBI handwriting expert Agent Patricia Reeves. But the paper analysis suggests temporal impossibilities. We have entries from 1996 written on aged paper and entries from 2024 written on contemporary paper, all in the same journal. Dr. Harrison's investigation revealed that the area was situated over what appeared to be a natural geological formation with unprecedented electromagnetic properties. Ground-penetrating radar showed underground structures that didn't match any known geological patterns, and the magnetic field readings indicated the presence of materials or formations that weren't found elsewhere in the region. What we're looking at, Dr. Harrison explained to Detective Chen, appears to be a naturally occurring phenomenon that affects the normal flow of time and the standard processes of decay and aging. This location seems to exist in a state of temporal flux that preserves organic materials and possibly even biological processes. The investigation took a dramatic turn when thermal imaging equipment detected heat signatures in a hidden valley approximately half a mile from the Backpack Discovery site. The signatures suggested the presence of two human-sized heat sources in an area that official topographical maps showed as inaccessible rocky terrain. Detective Chen, reported Thermal Imaging Specialist Officer Mark Rodriguez, we have confirmed human heat signatures in a location that appears to be inhabited. The thermal patterns suggest ongoing activity and what looks like a permanent settlement. The investigative team, now expanded to include mountain rescue specialists and federal agents trained in wilderness operations, began a careful approach toward the heat signature location. What they found challenged every assumption they had made about the nature of survival and the limits of human adaptation. In a sheltered valley that was invisible from aerial reconnaissance and accessible only through a narrow passage between towering rock formations, they discovered an elaborate long-term wilderness settlement. The area contained sophisticated shelter structures built from natural materials, terraced gardens, growing food crops, and evidence of technological innovations that suggested decades of continuous habitation and improvement. But most extraordinary of all, they found Sarah Martinez and Michael Chen. The couple appeared to be in their late 30s or early 40s, showing some aging from their 1996 appearance, but appearing far younger than their actual ages of 56 and 58. They were healthy, alert, and seemed completely adapted to their wilderness environment. When the investigation team approached their settlement, Sarah and Michael showed no surprise or alarm, as if they had been expecting the contact. "We've been watching your research team," Sarah said calmly as Detective Chen introduced herself. "We knew it was only a matter of time before the climate changes exposed our supply caches and someone would start asking questions." Michael, who appeared to be in excellent physical condition despite nearly 3 decades in the wilderness, gestured toward their settlement. "We've been living here since 1996, but not in the way you might expect. This place operates under different rules than the outside world." Detective Chen, trained to handle crisis situations and unusual circumstances, found herself struggling to process what she was witnessing. "Sarah, Michael, we've been looking for you for 28 years. Your families believe you died in a hiking accident. Can you explain what happened?" Sarah and Michael exchanged a look that suggested they had been preparing for this conversation for years. "Detective," Sarah said, "what happened to us challenges fundamental assumptions about time, space, and the nature of reality itself. We're not sure you'll believe what we're going to tell you." Over the next several hours, as the investigation team documented their settlement and Dr. Harrison continued his scientific measurements, Sarah and Michael told their story. What they revealed would force a complete re-evaluation of scientific understanding about temporal phenomena and the possibility of naturally occurring time distortions. "On our 3rd day of hiking in September 1996, Michael explained, "we discovered this valley during a storm. We took shelter here and noticed immediately that something was different. Time moved differently. Days felt like hours, but we weren't aging at the normal rate. Sarah continued the explanation. We realized that this location exists in what we can only describe as a temporal bubble. While 28 years have passed in the outside world, we've experienced only about 10 years of subjective time. Our bodies have aged accordingly. Dr. Harrison's instruments confirmed that the electromagnetic properties of the valley were unlike anything in scientific literature. The readings I'm getting suggest that this location experiences temporal dilation, similar to theoretical physics models, but occurring naturally rather than through technological means. The couple explained that they had initially tried to leave the valley and return to their normal lives, but discovered that the temporal effects made it impossible to synchronize with the outside world. When they attempted to exit the valley, they found that days or weeks had passed in the external time frame while they had experienced only hours. We realized that if we left permanently, Sarah explained, we would emerge into a world that had moved far ahead of us. Our families would have aged decades while we had aged only years. We made the decision to stay and try to understand what was happening to us. Over the years, they had developed a sophisticated understanding of the temporal anomaly and had learned to work within its constraints. They discovered that the effects were localized to specific areas within the valley system and that they could create stable zones where time moved at normal rates for limited periods. We've been conducting our own research, Michael said, showing the investigation team detailed journals and observations. We've documented the temporal effects, mapped the areas of strongest distortion, and learned to predict when the anomalies will be most and least active. Their research had revealed that the temporal distortions were connected to underground geological formations that created natural electromagnetic fields with properties that current science couldn't explain. They had also discovered that the effects were variable, sometimes allowing normal time flow and sometimes creating periods of extreme temporal dilation. The preserved food you found in our backpacks, Sarah explained, comes from our ability to create temporal stasis fields. We can preserve organic materials almost indefinitely by placing them in areas where time moves extremely slowly. Dr. Harrison's investigation confirmed that the couple's explanations were consistent with his instrument readings. What they're describing matches the electromagnetic anomalies I'm detecting. This location appears to be a natural laboratory for studying temporal physics. The investigation team faced an unprecedented situation. They had solved a 28-year-old missing persons case, but the solution raised more questions than it answered. Sarah and Michael were alive and healthy, but they existed in a state that challenged fundamental understanding of time and human biology. What we have to decide now, Detective Chen told the federal investigators, is how to handle this information. These people aren't missing anymore, but they're living in circumstances that science says should be impossible. Sarah and Michael had anticipated this dilemma. We've been preparing for this day for years, Sarah said. We know that our situation raises questions about the nature of reality that most people aren't ready to accept. The couple had developed a proposal for how to handle their case. They offered to work with scientific researchers to study the temporal anomalies, but only under conditions that would protect both their privacy and the security of the location. They were concerned that public knowledge of the temporal effects could lead to exploitation or tourism that might disrupt the delicate natural balance of the area. We've become guardians of this place, Michael explained. We understand its properties better than anyone, and we've learned to live within its constraints. We can't return to normal life, but we can help science understand what's happening here. Dr. Harrison recognized the extraordinary research opportunities presented by the discovery. This location could revolutionize our understanding of temporal physics, but it would need to be studied carefully and protectively. The federal investigators faced a classification decision that would determine how the information about Sarah and Michael's survival would be handled. The temporal anomalies had potential national security implications, but the couple's wishes and their constitutional rights also had to be considered. After extensive discussion with federal authorities and scientific advisors, a decision was reached to classify the location and its properties while allowing limited scientific research under strict security protocols. Sarah and Michael would be allowed to continue living in the valley, but would participate in ongoing research efforts to understand the temporal phenomena. Their families were informed that Sarah and Michael had been found alive, but the full details of their circumstances were shared only with immediate family members who agreed to confidentiality agreements. For the public record, the couple were reported as having survived by finding shelter and resources in a remote valley, with the temporal aspects of their situation kept classified. Elena Martinez, Sarah's sister, was flown to the site to reunite with Sarah after 28 years. The reunion was emotional, but complicated by the fact that Elena had aged normally while Sarah appeared decades younger than her actual age. "I never stopped believing you were alive," Elena told Sarah as they embraced, "but I never imagined anything like this." Michael's parents, now in their 80s, were brought to the valley to see their son. The reunion was bittersweet, as they had to come to terms with the fact that their son existed in a reality where normal family relationships were no longer possible. The scientific study of the temporal anomalies began immediately, with Dr. Harrison leading a classified research project involving the National Science Foundation, NOAA, and several universities. Sarah and Michael became essential collaborators in the research, sharing their decades of observations and helping scientists understand the complex patterns of temporal distortion. "What we're learning here," Dr. Harrison reported to his supervisors, "could fundamentally change our understanding of physics, time, and the nature of reality itself. This location appears to be a natural window into aspects of temporal mechanics that we've only theorized about." The research revealed that the temporal anomalies were connected to unique mineral formations deep underground, combined with specific electromagnetic conditions created by the area's geological structure. The effects were natural, but so rare that this might be the only known location where such phenomena occurred. Sarah and Michael's settlement became a unique research station where scientists could study temporal physics under natural conditions. The couple continued to live in the valley, but now as partners in one of the most important scientific discoveries in modern history. "We've found our purpose," Sarah told Dr. Foster during one of her research visits. "We can't return to the world we left in 1996, but we can help expand human understanding of the universe in ways that were never possible before." The couple aged slowly and lived comfortably in their temporal bubble, contributing to scientific knowledge while existing in a state that bridged the gap between normal human experience and the profound mysteries of time itself. Their story became a classified case study in survival, adaptation, and the unexpected ways that human consciousness could interface with the fundamental forces of the universe. For the families and friends who had mourned Sarah and Michael for 28 years, their survival was a miracle that challenged everything they thought they knew about loss, time, and the nature of reality. The couple had not only survived their disappearance, but had discovered something that expanded the boundaries of human knowledge and possibility. The valley where they lived remained under federal protection, its secrets shared only with the scientific community that worked to understand its properties. But for Sarah Martinez and Michael Chen, it had become home in ways they could never have imagined when they first sought shelter there during a storm in September 1996. Their story stands as a testament to human adaptability, the mysteries that still exist in the natural world, and the possibility that reality itself might be far more complex and wonderful than science has yet discovered. In solving one of Colorado's most famous missing persons cases, investigators had uncovered evidence that the universe still holds secrets that challenge our most fundamental assumptions about the nature of time, space, and human existence.